In the sweltering summer of 1948, Texas politics was on the brink of a dramatic turning point. The Democratic primary runoff for the U.S. Senate, effectively the deciding election in a one-party state, pitted the folksy, conservative former governor Coke Stevenson against the ambitious, fast-rising Congressman Lyndon B. Johnson. What began as a hard-fought political contest soon became one of the most controversial elections in American history. At the heart of the storm was Box 13, a single ballot box in rural Jim Wells County, whose mysterious last-minute votes would tip the balance of victory. What followed was a bitter legal battle, accusations of outright fraud, and a legacy that continues to shadow Johnson's rise to power. Introduction. The Box 13 scandal stands as one of the most infamous instances of election fraud in U.S. political history. It involves a grainy ballot box, a razor-thin election margin, and a disputed right to claim a seat in the U.S. Senate. The episode also launched Lyndon B. Johnson onto a path that would eventually lead him to the presidency, raising enduring questions about political ethics, democracy, and power. 2. Political landscape in Texas, 1948. In 1948, Texas remained a one-party Democratic state. The Democratic nomination was essentially the general election. The two principal factions were the conservative Texas Regulars, aligned with former Governor Coke R. Stevenson, and the more liberal Texas Loyalists, including Congressman Lyndon B. Johnson. The Democratic primary runoff between Stevenson and Johnson became a bitterly contested fight for ideology and power. By the time votes were counted, Johnson had been declared the winner by just 87 votes out of nearly 1 million cast in the statewide runoff, an unbelievably narrow margin that instantly raised suspicions. Eastern Illinois University III. Enter Box 13, Jim Wells County. The flashpoint of controversy was Jim Wells County's Box 13, where after the polls had closed, 202 extra ballots arrived, 200 for Johnson and only 2 for Stevenson. These late additions flipped the statewide totals, giving Johnson the narrow lead he needed to win. Further scrutiny revealed oddities. The names on those ballots were alphabetized and written with identical handwriting, suggesting they were added artificially. Some alleged voters on the list claimed they never voted. One man testified that when he voted just before the polls closed, nobody was behind him, meaning the later names couldn't have voted in line. Stevenson challenged the results in court, but the state Democratic Party's executive committee certified Johnson's victory by a single vote, and the U.S. Supreme Court declined to intervene, ruling the state party's authority over nominations placed the matter out of federal jurisdiction, affects political machines, and oral testimonies. For years, rumors circulated about political boss George B. Parr, known as the Duke of Duval County, and his role in orchestrating vote fraud. Parr's influence in South Texas was considerable, and election judge Louis Salas later confirmed the details. In a 1977 interview with Associated Press reporter James Mangan, Salas said plainly, "Johnson did not win that election. It was stolen for him, and I know exactly how it was done." Salas revealed that Parr directed the addition of fake votes in Box 13, producing a fabricated tally sheet that decided the outcome. Justice Hugo Black, acting as a circuit justice for the Fifth Circuit, issued an emergency stay of a court injunction, effectively halting investigations into the fraud and allowing Johnson to be certified v. consequences and historical legacy. Despite fierce public debate and private accusations, the result stood. Johnson was seated in the Senate and never formally removed. He went on to win the general election by a landslide and eventually rose to the presidency. Stevenson's challenge ended, his political career faded, and Parr died under mysterious circumstances in 1975. Another key figure, Sam Smithwick, a prison inmate claiming knowledge of the fraud, died in custody shortly after alleging corrupt activity tied to Box 13. Robert Caro's landmark biography, Means of Ascent, later narrated the scandal as a defining moment in Johnson's ascent, suggesting ruthless ambition and machine politics carried the day. Broader importance. The Box 13 scandal illustrates how localized electoral manipulation can have far-reaching consequences. It reveals how political machines and party elites could influence tightly controlled outcomes, and how institutional mechanisms lacked the transparency required to ensure accountability. It also underscores persistent tensions within democracy, the balance between state party authority and oversight, the challenges of detecting fraud in low-population precincts, the long shadow of historical injustice impacting national trajectories. In the end, Box 13 remains a stark reminder that democracy depends on trust, transparency, and vigilance at every level, not just in sweeping national elections, but also in small county precincts where a handful of votes can decide major outcomes. 7th, Summary Box 13 was the key precinct in Jim Wells County whose suddenly updated vote count decided the Democratic runoff in favor of Lyndon B. Johnson. Suspected fraud included alphabetized handwriting, polling errors, and post-close entries. Justice Hugo Black's stay prevented legal challenges, effectively sealing Johnson's nomination. Testimony from election judges and AP interviews decades later confirmed the vote stuffing. The scandal shaped American politics by elevating Johnson's career and remains a cautionary tale about election integrity. The Box 13 scandal endures as a vivid reminder that the integrity of democracy can hinge on the smallest of margins, in this case just 87 votes. Whether viewed as a masterstroke of political cunning or a blatant theft of the people's will, the episode reshaped the course of American history by securing Lyndon B. Johnson's path to the Senate and eventually the presidency. It also exposed the vulnerabilities of the electoral system, where local political machines could manipulate results with little immediate consequence. Decades later, sworn testimony and investigative accounts would confirm what many suspected in 1948, that Box 13 was not a symbol of democracy in action, but of its subversion. Its lesson remains clear. Free and fair elections depend not only on the rules written in law, but on the vigilance of those entrusted to uphold them.